My grandmother first taught me to make tiramisu when I was about 7 years old. She grew up from an Italian background, having immigrated to France with her parents and 13 siblings after the Second World War. Her life had not been very simple or very giving, but she always seemed so generous to me when she hosted others. My siblings and I thought she was the most amazing cook in the world. We adored her food. She, on the other hand, called herself a simple cook, not very skilled. I can say to this day I strongly disagree with her. She just simply seemed to know how to do things that weren't always common knowledge when it came to food. She knew exactly how to prepare measurements with no measuring cups, how to cheat recipes whenever she didn't have something, or exactly how much cooking time things needed without any internet consultation. Even with tiramisu, something I thought would be impossible to perfect, she knew exactly how to make it without recipe or reminding. She even had special tricks and tools to make it seem to taste better than the ones we ate at restaurants. That also could be from the fact that she was my grandmother, and everything she made seemed to be better. My brother and I were especially diligent students in her kitchen. We were always asking her questions, trying to steal spatulas, taking ingredients out to give to her. She was always very receptive to our help, unlike some other adults. I was only maybe 5 or 6, and my brother was 8 maybe, but she didn't tell us to be careful or not to do things. She simply showed us first, and then trusted us to do it. I think we fell in love with her kitchen afterwards. My mother loved it too. She had grown up in a very progressive household and agreed wholeheartedly with the maid's do and then learn method. It was so refreshing as young kids to be treated so adult-like and to be included in a larger familial history. I think sometimes I notice that people are becoming more and more careful with their kids, like they could mess up and hurt them at any minute. My family were never ones to put up child barriers or tell us not to play in the woods or learn to cook or have to sit at the kids' table or not be able to visit your friends' houses by yourselves. I don't think sheltering kids really helps them at all. How do we learn if we don't scrape our knees, get a little muddy, burn our fingers, and then learn that the stove is dangerous? How do we ever grow into our own people with independent characteristics, actions, and thoughts if we're never given the opportunity to learn for ourselves as kids? There is this story my dad tells often about me that reminds me of this. When I was about 4 or 5, my kindergarten class went on a school field trip to the local farm during fall season to take a hayride through the corn maze. We walked there from my school, and then they told us to load up into the back of the wagon and sit on the hay blocks. Now, of course, I objected straight away because I saw that there were no seatbelts on the wagon. My teacher tried to explain to me that the wagon went slower than a car and that it was still safe to get on. I refused outright because I argued that sometimes cars go very slow too, but we still keep our seatbelts on until we're fully parked. Or at least that's what my mom had taught me. My classmates, hearing this argument, also decided that it wasn't safe and agreed with me. It got so bad that my teacher called my parents and asked them to drive down and come and try to talk me out of leading a 4 or 5-year-old revolution, I guess. My dad came, smiling the entire way from the car to the wagon, and asked me why I wouldn't get on. I explained to him my problem, and still smiling, he turned to my teacher and told her that he agreed with me. It wasn't safe, and that if it was an issue, he could take me home. Now, of course, knowing this about my dad, I'm sure now you realize how I, at 4 or 5 years old, came to the conclusion that it was okay to tell my teacher that no one could get on the wagon. So, of course, he ended up taking me home. The car ride back, my dad told me he was proud of me. He said that he was glad I knew my own mind, and that I didn't need him or my mom to tell me what was right. That I knew it on my own, and that I believed in my own beliefs enough to stand by them. He called me his little Napoleon, one of his favorite historical figures, which has its pros and cons. I had never been so proud before that moment. I was so encouraged by the fact that he allowed me to stand up by myself, explain myself, and be supported by him. I think that is the most important thing a family can give, support. It doesn't mean holding your hand through everything or never teaching you hard lessons by letting you fail, but just being there when it's important and knowing that your family will always be there. I'm very grateful for my family and how much we love each other. And when I make tiramisu, whether alone or with my grandmother, I'm reminded of how much they mean to me.